up you go, the more controlled you are. And when you get up to the higher operating thetan levels, OT7, you are very, very tightly controlled by the church. You have to report in to the Clearwater headquarters every 6 months. You have to have security checks. You have to, and they examine every part of their life. And they make sure that they're not reading any critical internet sites. They're not reading any critical books. They don't have any critical thoughts and so forth. They're really clamped down on these people. And where I was at Scientology's international base with Sea Org members, that's the ultimate in control. That is the most tightly controlled place in Scientology. And I spent 15 years there. And Mark told you some of what it's like. The place is surrounded by razor wire fences. They've got cameras and motion sensors. There's no way that you can get out of there, without touching off these sensors or alerting the security guards who patrol the grounds and so forth. And if you want to leave that Hammett compound, you have to get permission from your boss and from your boss's boss and so forth to be able to leave the compound. You can't just walk in and out. You have to have an okay. All letters in are opened, which is against federal law, but they do it anyway. If you get a letter from your parents, they open it first before it goes to you. And if it contains anything critical of Scientology, well, you're hauled in, and you say, well, you have to handle your parents or disconnect and so forth. Then when you write a letter out, same thing. It gets censored, and there are musters, there are this, there are that, but in addition to that, there are physical punishments. People get thrown in the lake out there. They have to run around the buildings, and it's true. There's also physical abuse, and I was personally beat up on 5 separate occasions by the head of Scientology, David Miscavige, who is supposed to be the leader. He likes to call himself the Pope of Scientology. Well, he's a bully. He's a bully. And interesting, we were in the Steve Allen Theater. Steve Allen called Scientology a religion of bullies. And I think that's pretty accurate, and it's led by the biggest bully of all, which is David Miscavige. So why didn't I leave? Well, it was the carrot and stick. I didn't want to lose my eternity. I still had, still had my faith, even though I was being physically and mentally abused. But I finally said, I don't care. I don't care if I'm damning my soul for eternity or whatever this means. I don't care. I have to leave this place because I will not be abused anymore. And I walked out, and I had to, I lost my wife, wonderful woman that I love very much. I lost all my friends, all my family who were still in Scientology at that point. I couldn't talk to them. And I had to go out with a few dollars in my pocket at age 58 and start a whole new life from scratch. They gave me no money, they gave me no help, and I knew no one outside of Scientology, and I had to just pick up in a strange city where I knew nobody and build a new life, which I did. But I have a lot of friends who are still there. They are still in Scientology. They are still at the Int base, and if I were able to get the one message, I would tell them this, that leaving Scientology doesn't mean losing your eternity. It means gaining your freedom. Thank you.
Now, Jeff mentioned the fact that you're living lifetime after lifetime, and I've mentioned that too. And we're not attacking Scientology's beliefs. They can believe anything that they want. They just can't behave any way that they desire. And one of the byproducts of believing that you've lived millions of lifetimes in Scientology is that they believe that children are really, ageless beings, and they can be plucked away from their families at a very young age and put to work. And our next speaker faced that very thing when she was recruited at an extraordinarily young age to work for Scientology. And if you would, please welcome Laura DiCrescenzo.
Thank you. As he mentioned, I joined the Sea Org actually when I was 12 years old. I I was actually born into Scientology, but both of my parents were Scientologists and had been doing courses in Scientology in Portland, Oregon. And I actually did my first course when I was about 6 or 7 years old and signed my first contract, the billion-year contract that was mentioned, at the age of 7 or 8. I started working in an organization in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the age of 9. I got a worker's permit somehow. I don't even know how I managed to do this, but when I was 10, I got a worker's permit and was getting paid peanuts for, working usually about 30 to 40 hours a week at 9 until I was about 12 when I joined the Sea Org. The person who came to Albuquerque to recruit me basically promised all of these things that seemed great to my parents, so somehow they convinced them to let me go, which meant I moved to Los Angeles. They included things like I would continue my schooling. I would be able to have kids when I got older, and I'd be able to have kids and move back to Albuquerque, or I would do what was called the bridge to total freedom. As other people had mentioned, I would get all of that for free because I was working for them. All of my medical and dental expenses, which at the age of 12, as you can imagine, most kids have cavities, have dental work that needs to be done. I'd be able to go home and visit my parents even up to once a month if I wanted to because of my age. All of these promises were made, and it was made to seem like something that was going to be a wonderful experience. Unfortunately, most of those all turned out to be completely and utterly false. Because I was 12, I was considered I was very qualified. I had no life. As I'm sure you can imagine, most 12-year-olds go to school, play video games, and don't really have any history that would make them unqualified for what they considered the higher organizations in the Sea Organization. In fact, one of the things that they make you do when you're in the Sea Org is they fill out what's called a life history form. It's about 8 pages of extremely personal questions, everything from every medication you've ever taken to any drugs you've taken, every date you've ever gone on, every sexual experience you've ever had in great detail. And then they put you on an e-meter, their lie detector basically, to verify that you're telling the truth. And at 12, my life history had nothing. It was a bunch of no, 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 no. So I was like considered prime pickings for them. Not to mention the fact that at 12, your mind's basically an open slate. You can be programmed however they want you to be. So I joined the Sea Org. I left my parents and moved to Los Angeles. As I mentioned, pretty much everything that they had promised me was a lie. I didn't continue my schooling hardly at all. I would go once a week maybe with no trained teacher. And then it came to visiting my parents. Here I am, 12 years old. I wanted to go home and see my parents for a weekend. My first visit home was a complete and utter nightmare. I was supposed to leave on a plane, and within a few hours of the plane leaving, I was told that I couldn't leave unless I had gone on their e-meter and done a security check. And I was like, well, my mom has bought me a non-refundable ticket. How am I supposed to do this? I'm supposed to leave in a couple hours. They said, well, you can't. If you do, you're going to be subject to justice when you come back. That basically means that my position in the organization that I was in would be negated. It meant a lot of things when you're in the Sea Organization. A justice action's considered scary. Anyway, so I was like, okay, well, how am I supposed to do this? I'm supposed to get on this plane. You don't mess with my mom's money, you know what I mean? This is a non-refundable ticket. So I said, okay, I'm going to go anyway. So I actually went to the complex where I had my birthing at the time. I had gone from the HGB over to the complex, and I got into the super shuttle in the horseshoe of the complex, and security actually came out and physically prevented me from leaving. I had locked the door because I